Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us today on episode 41 of the Pool Chasers podcast. Our mission is to help educate and inspire in the form of a podcast. It is a very exciting time here at the Pool Chasers studio as we have now gone to weekly episodes, so keep your eyes and ears peeled every Monday morning for a new episode of your favorite podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, David Penton. David is the CEO of Fluid Dynamics Pool and Spa in Fullerton, California. We actually met David a year ago at the 2018 Western Pool and Spa Show. We had just come out with episode 1 and 2, and we were talking to David about what we were doing with Pool Chasers, and he was very excited to see what we were going to do with it. So we've been working on this interview for a little over a year now, and we're very honored to get the chance to record with David. His company, Fluid Dynamics, is a certified SWD Master within the Society of Watershape Designers, which requires completion of 150 hours of education within the Genesis University. We were on our way to the Western Pool and Spa Show this year and thought, why not make the best of it? So we were honored to go to the Ask the Master studio and record with him in beautiful Costa Mesa, California. And we're very excited to share his story.
This is Travis Schultz with Clearly Texas Pool Service in San Antonio, Texas. You're listening to the Pool Chasers podcast.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
Boy, it's so fun to be on the show with you guys today. We started a conversation at the Western show last year about trying to be able to do this, and so seeing it come to life is exciting for me too.
I know. We've been really looking forward to this moment. So we'll just jump right into it. You want to maybe just tell us a little bit about your story and maybe your childhood and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I actually didn't grow up here in California. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, kind of the snow belt of the United States. And but even before that, my dad was stationed in Germany during Vietnam. And so the first 4 years I lived in Germany. So that was pretty cool. Got to on weekends we would go do a lot of camping all over Europe. So we had fun doing that. And then moved back to Buffalo when I was, I think, 4. And my mom is one of 6 kids, and so she's got a big family. We've got all of her brothers and sisters have 3 children. So our family reunions were crazy back then. We get together 4, 5, 6 times a year with all the family, and dozens of cousins and that. So we were in Buffalo until 1985. And then moved out here between my 7th and 8th grade year in junior high. It was a tough transition. It's a tough time for kids in general. And so, moving all the way cross country, very culturally different. But I've always loved the outdoors. And so really just kind of embraced the lifestyle here. You can't beat Southern California for the just being able to be outside all the time and that. I've been here since junior high. And
yeah, it's a beautiful place. What city did you actually come to first from New York?
So we came to Fullerton.
Fullerton, okay.
Yeah, which is, for those that don't know, we from my backyard, when we have our trees trimmed, we can actually see the fireworks every night at Disneyland.
Oh, nice.
So we're about 6 or 7 miles from Disneyland. It's really nice. We're real close to the beach. It's about a 25-minute drive to get down here to Newport Beach, Huntington Beach. And then to get my winter fix, I can run up to the mountains in an hour and a half and be in the snow. So I love the whole area here.
That's really cool. What is your favorite beach to go to out here?
Just down the street here. My son and I do a lot of surfing, and so we surf here in Newport Beach all the time. It's probably that and San Clemente are our 2 favorite places.
Oh, very cool. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about your family and maybe some of the activities that you like to do.
Sure. Yeah, my wife and I, it's kind of a funny story. I guess you could say I fell in love with her sophomore year of high school, and it took her quite a while to come around to that realization. So, I chased her for a number of years. We dated off and on through high school. And then once we got into college and after I started my company, she finally came around and acquiesced. I don't know if it was my persistence or whatever. But yeah, we've been married 23 years.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's been the best thing ever. So we have 4 biological kids. My son is 18, almost 19, and all the way down. And then I have 3 daughters, 16, 11, and 7. And those are all our biological kids. And then just actually last February, like 3 months ago, we adopted 2 black babies, a brother and sister, out of the foster system, and they are 3 and 4 years old.
If you don't mind me asking, why exactly did you guys decide to adopt?
My wife had always had it in her heart, and she had always wanted to just go into adoption. I was a little bit less concerned or less interested in it. And my son had actually been in and out of the foster system since he was born. And we actually got real close to him with his previous family. And so through a long turn of events, he ended up going back home and then came back out of the foster system, and the other family was not available to take him. And so we jumped in and put our name in the hat, and they said, well, he comes with a baby sister too this time. And so, that was 2 years ago, and we never looked back now.
How's it? It's been good.
Oh, it's been hard, but yeah, I mean, it's our son Ty has really been a part of our life for 4 years, but he's just been officially adopted by us for. He was a little over a year, and then his sister was adopted by us a couple months ago.
Okay, so how often do you guys surf? Because surfing is it's a fun sport. It's one that I never really got to master because I never really lived near the ocean. But I know there's a lot of peace that comes with it. If you can kind of be one with the ocean and kind of even just sit out there on your board, it's kind of you can sort of meditate out there. So, what does surfing do for you and your family?
It's our whole family is built around water, always has been. My daughter's playing water polo now, so everything about water. But the beach is just kind of, where do you vacation? Everybody across the world, they go to the beaches, and they end up at the coastline, and there's just sort of a peaceful zen to it. Baby apps on your phone when you can't get your newborn to sleep. You turn on crashing waves. There's just a calm, meditative quality of the beach. And so my son and I get down at least twice a week, every Saturday morning, every Sunday morning.
So how hardcore are you guys? Are you out there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning for the break?
Oh yeah, first light.
Yeah.
Well, I have 6 kids. My wife's not allowing me to go for the day. So yeah, right. I got to be. We're driving down in the dark, and we're paddling out at first light. Yeah, and then the one thing that our family does too is a lot of camping. That's kind of something that was a part of the family rhythm with my family growing up, and we've really kind of picked that up with our family. And most of our camping is beach camping. So even us, we run to the coast as well.
That's cool. Have you always made it a point to surf and go camping and kind of just do a lot of different activities with your family, even at the maybe more difficult times of having your business? Yeah,
I grew up, that's the one foundation that I love from growing up in Buffalo and from being a part of a big extended family. The rhythm that we've always had within my household, growing up and then continued on, is that we always have dinner together every night. And, it gets challenging, and I bet we're 5-6 nights a week we do that. We have generally Friday nights are kind of family night that we go out to dinner on Friday nights as a family, and so surfing and family time and just all of that kind of just fits in with that same rhythm of how we do family and how we keep our relationships together.
Hey guys, we're interviewing a few of Jobber's customers today to let you hear their testimonials. So, all right, can you just tell me your name, your business name, kind of what you guys do?
Sure. My name's Hal Dinbar with Patriot Pool and Spa in Austin, Texas. We are a service company that about 60% of our business is weekly pool cleaning and the rest is equipment installation and repair.
Anything else you want to share about Jobber, how it's helped you or anything?
Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciate about Jobber is how good their support team is. Many times over the years we've been using it, we've reached out to them with questions or suggestions, and they're one, always fast to respond. Two, they always have a great attitude. You can tell they're enjoying what they're doing working for Jobber, and as a result, it's always helpful. Every interaction we've had with them, we've never had a wasted interaction or a negative interaction. It's always been positive.
Well, there you go. We could not have said it better ourselves. So if you guys want to check out a software solution for your business, please go to getjobber.com/pool chasers. That's getjobber.com/pool chasers. If you go to that website, you can get a 14-day free trial as well as 20% off your first 6 months. So it's a great deal. Check it out.
Right. And I know this might not be a easy, question to answer, but, given the your role, you're an owner and you have so many things going on. You have so much responsibility with these, high-end pool builds. How do you manage your time? Like, how did you figure that out? Because I know being able to go surfing and doing all those things, yeah, it's fun and all, but you still have a responsibility to go out and make money so that you can, provide for your family. How do you structure everything so that you can still do all of that?
Yeah, one of the things I think I have a unique ability is to be able to turn things off completely. And it gets to be a bit of a hindrance at times as well. Sometimes an important phone call will come in and, I'll be at dinner and I won't take it. But it's just being very structured, being very intentional. When I'm at work, I'm all in. I'm at work and trying to just manage my time real well. And then over the years, I've just built an amazing team in my office that really helps me out a ton. My lead guy, Martin, he has a very similar personality to myself, and we really we think very similarly, and he's really he helps me out a lot. And then my assistant Janine at the office, she screens most of my calls, and so it's just surrounding myself with a really competent team has allowed me to kind of focus where I need to when I need to on family and
sure.
And that.
I'm sure it makes it so much easier as well to delegate things. I know that can always be really difficult for a lot of people. I know it's hard for us, because you're so involved with all the different things you got going on. But, to actually take the time to make somebody as good as you or hopefully better, it's hard to let that go for whatever reason. But to be able to build, the best team that, you can possibly have, that way they kind of feel that ownership, and then just, delegate the things that, maybe you shouldn't be working on.
Yeah. One of the things that I really, that I took to heart a couple years ago, and it was a hard thing to learn and took me a long time, was just to be able to trust my team. And micromanagement, I can tend to get in there and really micromanage. And that one of the big things that I had to kind of realize is that there's more than one way to do things right and good, and the way I see things sometimes are not necessarily the way Martine sees things sometimes. And what I always stress with my team is that if I'm not available and you need to make a decision without me, I need you to just make the best decision that you can make. And if you make a mistake, I'm not going to ream you for it. We're going to talk about it. If you make a mistake a second time and a third time and those are the same mistakes, then we're going to have a problem. But if you make a mistake one time, we'll deal with it. And just being able to let go of that, everything has to be just perfectly the way I want it. It's really empowering to my staff too, to be able to have that ability to make their own decisions and kind of step out on their own.
Nice. Do you think that creates more consistency? Because I think we can all, we all understand that things are just not going to be perfect. they're just not going to be perfect no matter what company you are. But if you kind of let your, team make mistakes, and if they can learn from it, you will build more consistency because they have kind of more ownership in the company, and they have more faith in their leader. And, with time, maybe you can have more consistency than if you're micromanaging, and who knows, why they do what they do.
Yeah. And the pathway of micromanagement means, you never work yourself out of a job, and you're always having to stay in that. And if you empower your team to be able to grow, it's really important for team building and team bonding and the overall consistency of your team, allowing them to feel like they have an ownership and that they have decisions and that they have the ability to grow in themselves is really has been real beneficial for the retention side of our staff as well.
Do you think it's wise to look at your team as almost an extension of your family and some of the values you have in your home? You kind of, add some of the same values into your team. Do you think that's valuable? I know some people are like, home and work are two different things, regardless if you're the owner or, the manager or whatever. But do you think they have a lot of similarities that you should kind of bring on over to the work side?
Yeah, I definitely think, there are different management styles. And my personal style is that, I don't necessarily bring family stuff to work. But the reality is I have 10 guys and they're responsible for their families. And so I try to be real respectful of not only their time, but how much money they're being paid and that kind of thing. And just, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and sometimes I think you can get to the point where, you just look at somebody as a Social Security number or a $17 an hour guy, whatever, and that's where I just never want to go there myself. I always want to treat everybody as if they were a family member.
Right. Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, we definitely have the same mentality when we were dealing with our team. We definitely tried to create an atmosphere for them to want to come to work, wake up every day, feel a sense of pride in what they're doing, which, as you know, cleaning pools, sometimes it gets monotonous and
sure,
you're not like, sometimes people don't want to be called the pool guy, but you can make pretty good, decent living at it. And if you have a good team or you work for somebody good, and you can take care of your family, and it's a good job to be proud of. And I think sometimes it's looked upon as not so being proud, but I think as we grow and make the industry better, it'll be a little bit more of a sense of pride as that continues.
Well, it's one of the things that I love about this format that you guys have formed is that you guys are creating for so long the pool guy mentality has been the guy walking in with his sandals and his shirt off and, a beer in his back pocket. And there is really a professional side of this. And if we can just help kind of foster that within the industry. I didn't have to get into building out of my pool service company. I mean, we were doing pretty well as a maintenance company. I had a couple kids working for me, and there's definitely, if you set it up and structure it properly, for me personally, I don't see any shame's not the right word. I don't see any. I don't look down on the maintenance guys, especially the stuff that we do. My maintenance guys are a key part of our team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have I think if you have good owners, then you can have good employees and you can still be an employee and make pretty good money too. You just, because not everybody's made out to be owners, and I think sometimes there's a thing on this industry where you have to either own your own company or you don't make any money. But I think, if you have a good owner and the owner knows what it's doing with structured, has it in place, has, everybody's on the same page with what kind of job and what position you're doing, what you really understand, like what your part of the company is. And I think another part is the owner listens to that person, listens to the employees, what they want, how they want to move up. There's a give-take relationship, but really, you can take pride in what you're doing. And we talk about now, like, if we could go work for somebody first and learn everything, that to me is the better path, because you're not having to step over yourself left and right and, make bad choices and lose a bunch of money here or there because you didn't know what you were doing, because there's lots of stuff in the beginning where we had to eat stuff because, same thing with building. I'm sure, you have to eat. If you mess up and you're a good company, you'll make it right. So, if you can take the time to go train under somebody, and I think I said this before, but if you have somebody understanding of, I'm going to come work for you for 2 years, but I'm going to give you the best 2 years I can give you. I think most owners would be pretty cool with that, because they know they're getting a solid worker, and they'll train you, and then the industry gets better if you move on and do your own thing.
Yeah, one of the things, the way I modeled my service company was very similar to that. It's a bit frustrating in that you're always churning people, and you're not keeping people long term. But one of the things that I loved was that, I've been mentored so much throughout my career, and so I looked at it as a mentoring opportunity. And so I was always hiring young kids who had 15, 20 pools on their own. And so I knew that they were committed and that they were all in, and that they were going to learn the company and learn the business, and that they were wanting to build and better themselves. And I brought them up, but the reality is every 2 years I was hiring new guys.
Right.
But, I'm still in communication with a bunch of those kids, and that was my way of kind of giving back to the industry. It's like, bringing them up, teaching them the things so that they're not learning it all on their own, and then, launching them off. It's kind of like raising kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All of us kind of, I think, grow up, or you should have a mentor or somebody in your life or in the business that's guiding you through. Who do you think has made the biggest impact on your life?
It's a really broad question, and I have a number of people. So just going back, I grew up in and around the church, and so we always had real formal mentoring programs within our church, and that's really where it kind of starts. A guy named Lonnie, who actually to this day we still surf together. So we've been surfing together since the mid-'80s, and he was my leader in junior high. And then he actually gave me my first job cleaning pools. And so he was my first mentor, and I learned how to clean pools with him. And so that was kind of started my interest within the industry. And then another guy, we're actually sitting in his building here, Randy Beard. Randy used to own a company called Pure Water Pools. He's since retired and does marketing now for a living. But Pure Water Pools was really a pretty influential contractor here in Southern California, and we're just up the freeway from him here, and so we're same market, same everything, but he never saw me as competition, and so I would jump in his truck probably 3, 4, 5 times a year. I would just ride along with him and just watch him and just watch what he did and how he interacted with clients.
Yeah, he has a really cool story.
Yeah, and just his journey. He's kind of done everything. He was president of IPSA for a while, and influential in UPA for a long time. So he's really, he understands, like I do, kind of that journey through service and then into construction and all of that.
Right. So you just talked about, kind of mentorship. What is some advice that you could give to anybody listening to this that might be struggling with their business, or they're just not motivated? I feel like we've met a lot of people in the industry that come from broken homes, or they don't have mentors, or they don't even know how to reach out to even find a mentor. They just think that, I can't afford that. But what kind of advice would you just give somebody that's just kind of down in the dumps and they just don't know what to do and they're kind of lost in everything?
There's pretty good organizations out there. IPSA really comes to mind on the service side. You have the UPA and the IPSA, and they're kind of different structured organizations. And UPA is a little bit more pragmatic and not quite as structured as IPSA is. I happen to have been in UPA, but from everybody that I've talked to in the IPSA organization, they're really pretty intentional about education and all of that. And so that would be I think that would be a good starting point, is just find, a local chapter like that to be able to plug in. And, you're going to have your crusty old guys that are not going to necessarily be interested in helping. But so many of those places, your first time asking, you always feel a little bit weird. But what I've found is that a lot of people really do want to give. And so many people don't really have an opportunity to give back. And so just kind of putting yourself out there a little bit and asking. I think you'd be surprised how many people would be interested in helping out.
That's really cool. I'm glad you said that, because I don't think a lot of people really understand that. And if you caught, myself, Ty, or Kyle on the streets, and you had a question about anything business related or, pool industry related, anything that we know, we would genuinely feel great about giving you any information that we know, because it really does feel good making an impact in somebody's life. And especially if they take that information and they use it and they build a better business and they get more clients and they're maybe a better father, better husband, whatever it may be, whatever kind of advice we've given, it's the greatest feeling in the world to be able to give back. And that just motivates you to keep doing it and let them know, pay it forward. Don't forget where you came from. Just like we helped you, make sure that when you get, to the summit, make sure that you help somebody else in need.
Yeah, and I think you can even pull it back even further than that. Even you don't have to reach the summit. If you've been in this,
your summit.
Well,
sometimes some other people's summits are hills.
Well, but on the mentoring side, a guy that's been in 6 months knows more than the guy that's starting, right now. And so to kind of change everybody's mindset that, you don't have to have arrived, you can help somebody that's just a little bit behind you. You don't have to be, all the way and have everything figured out. And that's a challenge I would give to all the listeners, is that, look back behind you and see, hey, is there anybody I can pull up alongside me and help bring up? And, ultimately they may pass you and they may become better than what you ever were. But, to have had a little piece in that, that's, to me, I don't ever feel threatened by that. If I bring somebody up and they become a way better builder than me, then wonderful. I had a little piece of that.
I think, on your point, like if you're going to come up, and we talk about this a lot, but if you're going to come up and ask for help, like make sure you do it like respectfully.
Yes.
Go to those people with respect and tell them like, hey, I really love what you do and I'm really inspired by what you do and I want to model my business after you, or model some of these things after what you guys are doing. Would you mind, helping or sharing a few things? Don't just go straight at like, hey, can you answer this question for me? Because it's really, I think from, a standpoint of the one that's already been there, that feels a little bit disrespectful that they're not respecting what you've gone through.
They don't respect your time. That's what, when we see that, I feel like sometimes they don't respect your time, because the time is so valuable. It's like willing to give you that time, but just need you to understand that, time is valuable. And I want you to know like how valuable this information is. Not that we're awesome. I mean, the fact that you have to step away from your business to talk for maybe an hour is giving a lot, So
yeah, and I think a lot of mentoring, mentoring can't happen like in a classroom setting, like at the show we're going to be going to. That's teaching. Mentoring is a whole different thing. It's all based around relationship
and respect.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the best advice pieces that I got years ago was that if you're going to go and ask somebody, you need to be prepared for a no, but at the same time, oftentimes you need to go in with a real humble spirit, but then also go in with a bit of an agenda, because a lot of times when people come and ask for help or whatever, people do tend to get scared away about what's this commitment going to look like for me if I say yes to you.
Right.
So kind of if you have something in mind and you can present that to the person that you're asking and say, hey, I think, could we meet like an hour a month for the next 3 months or whatever, and have some sort of structure to it, it tends to lessen the barriers for the person that you're asking for help.
Yeah, I think the person you're asking is going to be much more likely to say yes if they have an understanding of what it involves as far as commitment-wise, for sure. One other thing you said earlier, I think that I really like in the industry, I think should take heart in is, you said Randy didn't look at you as competition.
Sure.
I think, that whole look at everybody as competition thing needs to go away, because I understand, I guess in some of the other parts there's not as many pools, but and it's a little bit tougher, but in parts like Arizona, Texas, here, California, and Florida, and it is competition, but you also, if you guys are raising the bar, like you're not really competing for that job. There's so many pools, so many jobs. If you help each other out and you kind of go at a united front a little bit where, hey, we're going to charge this much, like you guys can charge this much. And, I think there's a little bit more of a way that we can even the playing field a little bit and raise the bar, where if you understand what we're doing and we understand what you're doing, we can be like, hey, all right, well, this is how we're going to kind of attack the pools or attack this part of the industry and make more money, because that way, if you're undercutting everybody, then that doesn't help anybody. So.
Well, and I think collectively we're better as an organization when we're unified.
Mm-hmm.
You go to your monthly UPA meetings or your IPSA meetings, and I can't tell you. I mean, we have online forums for builders and stuff too. I can't tell you how many times I've been racking my brain about something, and I'll finally I break down and I post a question to somebody, and 3 people come in and they've got like 2-second answers, that are like world changing to whatever problem I had that I've been up at night, and so I think collectively we can make each other better and not holding everything so close to the breast. Yeah, there's some things that you're not going to share with everybody, but there's some other tricks of the trade and things that will not only help others around you be more efficient. It raises the professionalism as well.
For sure.
Hey, Pool Chasers, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We'll jump right back into it in a minute. We are very proud to announce that Jandy has come on as a supporter of the podcast.
Their dedication to the businesses that make up our industry align very well with our vision here at Pool Chasers, and we are super excited to have their support. With their recent quitting the internet policy, which went into effect January 1st, they're taking a firm stance to support our industry. They have pulled over 400 SKUs offline, and as of January 1, no manufacturer's warranty will be provided if the product is purchased online. They've even put a team in place which monitors the web 24/7 to help ensure that the details of the policy are being followed. We think this policy is a great step forward for our industry and are so glad that a company has taken a stand for service guys and gals out there.
So if you haven't heard episode 31 yet, please go listen to it to find out more information, or go to jandy.com/buildstrong. That's jandy.com/buildstrong.
Yep, thank you for sharing all that. You have a really interesting story in the way you came into the industry. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, so I mentioned my mentor, Lonnie, and what started on just a whim, he needed a little bit of help throughout a summer. And so, I'm just a surf rat out of high school. Actually, that was after my freshman year of college. I just said, hey, it looks like fun what you do. Can I come clean pools with you? And he trained me for a couple of weeks, and then I went off on my own for the rest of that summer.
Did you service the pools in flip-flops?
I did.
I figured.
We need some photos of this.
Exactly. But Orange County was going through all of its bankruptcy stuff at that point, and so the state of California was a bit of a mess, and so I actually didn't get all of the classes that I was going to take that fall. Were all sold out at the junior college where I was going, and so my parents had always put a strong work ethic in me, and I figured if I'm not going to school full time, I'm going to take this opportunity and work for a semester. And so then locally here, I went to work for a real large corporate pool maintenance company. Back in the day, it was All Reds Pool Service, kind of like the Leslie's of pool service out here. At one point, they had peaked out at 7,000 or 8,000 pools on service just in LA and Orange County.
Wow.
So huge company, and jumped in there. Started with 60 pools, and by the time I left there, they had combined 2 routes, and I had peaked out right before I left All Reds at 120 pools a week, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but with a company that big, literally I would park on a street and do 5 pools and not move my truck. And you know, I had a service cart and everything, and we don't get a lot of weather here. Even like in Arizona, you guys get, you know, dust storms and windstorms and that. The city in Fullerton where I cleaned, we're kind of nestled in below a hill, so we don't even hardly get any wind. So you know, keep that quiet, the Fullerton pool guys. They're going to hate me, but yeah. So it was definitely possible for me to do a high quality job and be, you know, 12, 14, 15 minutes in and out of a pool. So that was that. That company went through Chapter 11 reorganization, and I just decided that I didn't want to necessarily go through that whole fiasco with them. And so I branched off on my own. I had a couple of the clients were, you know, they were kind of frustrated with the main corporate structure. And so a couple of clients had already been talking to me, and I said, you know, I can't do that while I'm here. But then I broke away. I actually had started a couple of pools on my own on the side. And so I think I only started with 4 or 5 pools. But I was living at home at the time still. And so I had no real bills. And that was the summer, what was that, summer of 92. And that entire summer, I just went old school and literally walked around all the neighborhoods I wanted to be and knocked on doors, you know, met people. Hey, are you happy with your pool service? By the end of that summer, I think I had 30 pools. And
but
then
you
I
knocked
ended
on
up
doors like 5 days a week, right? You said you
every
just,
evening.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
I would
crazy.
go out. I would have an early dinner, and then about 5:30 to 8 o'clock, I would knock on doors for an entire summer.
What do you think kept you in the industry? Was there like something that really got your attention when servicing the pool for the bigger company, that when they were going through the new changes, that you were like, man, I still want to stay in this? What was it about it that you liked enough to want to do your own thing?
You know what? The monotony didn't bother me. And so I kind of like that rhythm of walking in. And I always enjoyed walking into a dirty pool and walking out and being able to hold my head high and say, you know, look at the change I made here. And so, and just the flexibility of it. You know, growing up as a surfer, the ability to be able to kind of morph in and out and not have to be, you know, 7:30, I have to be at this pool every week. You know, if I know I had 6 hours worth of work that day, you know, and I knew the waves were good, I could get up and be at the beach at 5:30 and surf for an hour and a half and be back at my pools by 8 o'clock. And yeah, I'm starting 2 hours later, but you know, I'm still done at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So the flexibility was really probably the thing that I enjoyed the most early on, especially because I knew I was going to go back to college too. And so the ability to be able to go clean 3 or 4 pools in the morning, you know, go take 1 or 2 classes, then go do a couple more pools, and just that flexibility was always very, very, very freeing for me.
Sure. How do you think business has changed, you know, from now to when you were in your service business, as far as like reviews and having an online presence and all that stuff? I mean, it was just word of mouth? I mean, what did things look like back then? You know, as far as if you weren't doing a really good job, was it just kind of, it was just going to spread throughout the neighborhood because of word of mouth?
Yeah. I don't know, since I never did a bad job.
Well, good for you.
The word of mouth on the good side, I can speak to it that way. Say what you will, but there are quite a few, pool service companies that don't run themselves as professional organizations. And so it was always real easy for me to pick off those clients and just to be real personable and that. And so I don't know if that really answers your question. Do you want to clarify a little bit more what you're...
Yeah, I just know that it's so much, there's so much to having a business nowadays where people can say things on Nextdoor where you can't really defend yourself. You have Yelp, you have Google, you have Bing, you have, Thumbtack, Angie's List. You have the, Better Business Bureau. You have all these different platforms that somebody can step in and they can kind of change your business if you're not paying close attention to the way you're running the business or how you're managing your team. So I was just kind of curious as to, do you think things were easier back then as technology made things a little bit more difficult, where I know it's made some things easier, but technology can also sometimes make things a little bit more complicated?
I think the advent of technology has really increased the accountability that we all have. I think my initial thought, I don't deal with that, and by the time I was really out of pool maintenance, that was still hadn't kind of come of age. So it's an interesting question. My initial thought on that is just that, if you're running your business with integrity and how you take care of problems, that really speaks to a lot. You're always going to have a problem. Somebody's always going to drop a gallon of acid and it's going to split on a pool deck. There's always going to be, that moment where you got to own it. And I think that how you own that speaks a lot to, how you're going to be reviewed and all of that. And, you're always going to get the people that are just going to throw bad reviews, that are just, the mean people and that. And some of that you just have to kind of let roll off your back, because if you know internally that that's just not who you are, I don't know. I don't know how much that would play into what I would value myself.
Sure.
I think to your point, technology basically exposes who you are now, and exposes who those companies are. So if those companies aren't good companies, they're very quickly going to be, turned into those not so good companies online. So, it's harder to get away, I think, with things now if you're not a good company. And to your point, if you have integrity and you're doing things right, then it's not so much of a threat, because you have those crazies, but, you're not going to get, Susie, who you messed up with, is not going to leave a review as long as you make sure you take care of it properly.
But I also think that technology has made things in every industry a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
There's, it's a whole other business, honestly, like even running a marketing,
managing,
entity of your business. And there's a lot of people coming up that they haven't paid close attention to that sort of that factor of the business. And if you don't know anything about that, you can get dusted, especially if you're thinking about how things were, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. Things have changed, quite a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that you can ignore. I mean, it's definitely something that you need to be monitoring and need to be aware of and be aware that it's out there. But I think also I think sometimes we all, as just human beings, place too much on that. I think the marketplace has gotten pretty savvy too. And, you go into Yelp and I mean, you see it on restaurant reviews, there's always going to be 4 or 5 1-star reviews, and you're looking at it and you're going, wait, there's 130 5-star reviews and here's a 1-star review. The marketplace kind of understands that a little bit. And so I think that's why I don't think you need to worry about negative reviews quite so much, because one negative and 12 positives, the marketplace is not that gullible.
Sure. Thank you. So you want to talk to us a little bit about, after you're knocking on all these doors and you're getting these pools, kind of how did that look after, getting that sort of bump in pools right there?
Yeah. So after I had kind of formed my company, the interesting thing was that the supervisor right above me from All Reds he had become a part owner, and he during the reorganization, he actually just stepped out and just walked away from his ownership portion, and he started a service. He opened a retail store in Fullerton, in the town that I lived in, and where I'd already established. And about 6 months into it, he called me and said, "Hey, Dave, I've got too many pools. Can you come work for me?" And I said, "Well, no, I've got enough of my own. I don't want to work for anybody." And so we structured a subcontractor agreement. And so, I was the first, not really employee, but I was the first pool service guy for him. So I helped build his company. He helped build my company. And again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I mean, we're literally, I'm cleaning one of my pools here and then going next door and cleaning one of his pools. And so we could not be in more direct competition. But just that reality of, the city of Fullerton has 4,000 pools. No one company can do that. And so it was good for him. It was good for me. He helped me grow my business. And so that's really how I kind of grew up through there. I think I ended up staying with Bill probably 4 or 5 years. By the time I left, he had 2 full-time repair guys and 6 or 7 service guys. And so that was kind of my progression into full-time maintenance. I think by that time Laura and I had gotten married, and so she had a job, but I was doing well enough at that point that she didn't necessarily have to work. It was just a hobby for her. So we grew that. I grew my service company. I think we topped out at about 120 accounts, so I never got really, really big. I tried to stay in the 45 to 60 accounts myself, and then I had up to 3 kids working for me, all doing, between 15 and 30 accounts each. And I was doing repairs. I was doing all the repairs in the company, and they were doing the maintenance and all of that.
Were they also doing their own companies?
Yeah. That was kind of the time of my business where I was really mentoring and bringing up kids. Like I said, it made it easy for me because there was no real training. These kids were already had pools on their own. From a tax standpoint, they were true, legitimate, independent contractors. That's a touchy one in the pool industry. Because it's if they're working for you full time, they're not an independent contractor. And that gets real dicey with the IRS. And so I'm a pretty big rule follower. And so from that perspective, it totally worked. They had their own companies. They provided their own truck. They provided all their own equipment. They bought their own chemicals. All of that was part of the way we structured it. And but it also gave me the opportunity to watch them grow their businesses. And as they got more pools, they were always constantly giving them back to me. And then, eventually I'd bring on a new kid and start feeding the pools out there. And, so that's where that kind of, the model came in when I got hired from Bill. I was unaware that was even a model that we could do. But when he hired me and built the retail store, that was kind of the model that we did.
So when did you kind of have this idea that you wanted to maybe move on from the pool service and repair side of the industry and maybe even go on to building swimming pools?
So my best friend's parents, they were a wealthy family, and he and I had gone to school together, and we'd known each other since junior high. And I had been maintaining their pool for a number of years. And the dad pulled me aside one day and he said, Dave, I think, knowing you and knowing your background, he said, I think you can do construction. And, I want to encourage you to think outside of where you're at right now. And so I really kind of gave that some thought, and that was a number of conversations over 3 or 4 months. And what we ended up coming to was that he offered me a $100,000 remodel on his backyard. And
wow.
Yeah, that blew me away. And back, I mean, this was back 2002 when $100,000, that was a pretty significant to be my first job.
Man, that pool must have been looking good every week.
Oh, it was
leaving one heck of an impression.
Yeah, it was. Well, and we had known each other. I had been in and out of his house multiple times a week, so. So he really challenged me. He said, I'd like you to go out and I'd like you to learn the construction side of the business. And this contract is sitting here, and we will wait for you. And they waited until I moved my way through. I got my contractor's license and everything. And so that was kind of what launched me into the construction side. And I'm still running a service company at this point. And then that job, one of the neighbors happened to walk by one day and just popped in the backyard while we were tiling the pool and said, "Hey, I got a set of plans for a job, and I'm right around the corner. Can you come by and give me a price?" And so we got our second job right away after that. And that second job was actually through a designer. So the first job, they had plans, they had everything. I mean, they basically let me know, here's the budget, here's the job, we know how much it should cost, and it's yours. The second job, the client had already had a design, everything. And so that was my first exposure into dealing with a landscape architect. And the architect on that project was pretty involved. And so, I had to interview with her. We had to talk about kind of her visions, what she wanted in the backyard, and that ended up our second job. But that relationship with that architect turned into probably a 15-year relationship where we did dozens of projects together with her. So we really, that was that first job was a catalyst really into the construction side of the whole industry.
Right. Do you remember what you were doing on the first and second job? Like what did a day-to-day look like on both of those projects? Yeah,
those were those first couple ones were a little challenging because I was still cleaning pools 5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
And so the beautiful thing is that they were literally both right in the middle of my route. One of the things that I was also real fortunate is that my route, 100 pools, was within a 5 square mile radius. So nice. I never had to drive. And so that was beautiful because I could pop in and out all day long. I couldn't stay, and I wasn't actually, digging ditches or anything like that. I had subcontractors that were doing most of the work, but I could be in and out all day long. I could be there 5-6 times because I was never more than 2 or 3 miles away. And so those first 2 jobs were a bit challenging because I was really scattered. And about midway through that second job, I decided, okay, I'm liking this and I want to build this side of the company, and brought in another service guy. And that's when I really pulled myself down to where I was only doing like 30, 35 pools. Essentially, I went to 2.5 days of cleaning pools and 2.5 days of construction. And I think only like Wednesdays, I think it was, were the only day that I was like locked in and I was all in on cleaning pools. And so every other day I had a lot more flexibility to be able to be in the field on the construction side.
So what did it look like from when you were servicing pools and you had that conversation until you started working on that first construction? What did you go through to learn and find subcontractors, and how did you get from I'm cleaning pools to working on a construction project?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the guy that brought me into the company that I'd worked that first summer for. His name's Lonnie. And by that point, he was all in on the construction side. And so those first few jobs, I relied very heavily on him. And the reality is that he did probably 70% of the work on the jobs, and I just started soaking it all in and learning and everything. It's actually, as I look back on it, it's a bit frightening that I had those two, because the next job was probably a $70,000 job. So they were two pretty significant jobs, to be my first two jobs. But again, the mentoring relationship that I had established earlier really is how I was able to do that. And then I quickly learned that, I really don't know what I'm doing. And I love learning. And that's when I kind of found the Genesis organization and really kind of, I didn't realize there was anything out there even like that. And so really kind of jumped in with both feet into Genesis. And that's when I met Randy from Pure Water and just really threw myself into that whole education and learning how to do things properly. Again, I'm never real shy about asking. I always, people can always say no. And so, asking people like Randy, another one of the Genesis teachers, his name was Mark, lived in Fullerton, and just, hey, can you help me? Can I come? And, but to your point earlier, I always had that very respectful attitude, and I never wanted to feel like a burden. And so I always was very humble as I approached everybody, and even when I'm riding along in the trucks, there were times where Randy would say, "Okay, you can't come into this job," and I'd have to sit in the truck, maybe for an hour while he went into a meeting, and just having that humility to just be able to navigate that.
How did balancing the two? You kept the pool service so long, right? So when did you kind of start transitioning all the way away from service and into construction?
Was probably around 2010 that I really decided, okay, I'm all in on construction. We actually did hold the service company. I did finally sell off the last of the service company in 2015. So we held on to it for a while, and most of those were, clients that I had since 1991, 92. It's really, when you've been in it that long, it's like I saw these kids be born, and then I see them going off to college, and I remember one was getting married, and it's like, man, have I really known this family that long? But yeah, kind of in that 02, 03 was when I was kind of getting started in the construction, and so so it was a good 6-7 year transition to when I was all in on maintenance to when I was all in on the service side, on the construction side. By 2010, I was not cleaning pools at all. It was all kids subcontracting work out.
So when exactly did you start Fluid Dynamics? Was it after you went through the Genesis program, or?
I don't necessarily think. I started. It's a funny story. At the very beginning, the name of my company was Crystal Clear Pools, and I was 18 or whatever. I thought, oh, that's a really cool name, and and then I discovered that there was 25,000 crystal clear pools, and so I'm going to be real tricky, and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to spell it with K's. And so I was Crystal Clear Pool, spelled KK, and probably about 5 years into it, I discovered that there was another guy named Dave living in the city of Fullerton that had just registered the name Crystal Clear Pool and Spa. And
with K's?
With K's, everything. So I actually went to the county and got him to change his name, because legally I had the rights to the name. But I just decided I didn't want to, chase that anymore. And so that's when I came up with Fluid Dynamics. So, but back to your question, really, I just feel like Fluid Dynamics started as a service company, and now we're a full-time construction company. We changed to a corporation around 2008, and so we've gone from being a sole proprietor to now being a corporation, just for liability, for family protection. It's the clients that I work with have lawyers that, can bury me in 10 seconds, and I needed to protect my family and our assets.
For sure.
Right. So when did you decide to actually go through the Genesis program?
I was reading, I think, Aqua Magazine, Pull and Spawn News. I don't remember, which one it was, and saw the ad in the back of the magazine. And, I called. I really, it fascinated me to know that it was even available. And so really, once I discovered that education was there, I was all in even before I took my first class. So it was, I'm an information junkie. And so, just to know that there's actually a structured program out there. So even before I took that class. But I took my first class in 2006.
So since 2006, how many, hours or classes have you actually completed?
That's a good question. So, I know at least 150, and it's been more than that. So you have to, the certification, SWD certification, requires a minimum of 150 hours. But then each year, we all have to have at least 12 hours of continuing education to maintain your certification. So over the years, I would bet I'm probably 250 hours into my education for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. Can you explain to our listeners what SWD is exactly and, the masters?
Sure. Yeah, so it's actually become really well defined just even in the last couple of years. So the educational wing is called Genesis. Everybody knows it as Genesis 3, but it's been rebranded just in the last little while as Genesis University. And that is essentially where you go take the classes. Most of the Genesis classes are based around all of the big regional shows throughout the country. And so they're basically college-level classes crammed into a 2 or a 3 or a 4 day format. So they're pretty intensive. Every class has a final exam that you have to pass. There's 7 core classes within the Genesis University, and they're based around not only quality design, but architecture and then quality construction. So we have basic construction school, intro to design, 20th century architecture, hydraulics class, color theory class. Those are all the core classes, and then you can come in. There's lots of different, like SketchUp drawing and different business classes that you can take. And so at 150 hours, you have reached the point where you can where you are eligible to apply for membership into the SWD, which is the Society of Watershape Designers. And so as you apply for it, everybody goes through the same fairly rigorous application process. You have to be vetted by the entire community. An email goes out every time a new applicant comes in. The entire community of SWD gets emailed and says, "Hey, does everybody know this guy? Is there anything, bad that we need to know about him?" And so within the organization, we really try to make sure that those coming in are withholding the standards that we set within Genesis. And then SWD Masters, once you have become an SWD, you're able to apply for SWD Master, and that kind of takes the whole mentoring and vetting process up like 10 notches. So to become an SWD Master, you have to actually present 3 completed projects that get fully reviewed by the advisory board. And something we just started this year, which I'm really excited about, is that you have to have it's a full mentoring program. And so you have to have a mentor who is an existing sitting SWD Master, and you have to work through a complete job with them. It doesn't necessarily mean you hire them, but the SWD Master will typically fly out, or if it's locally, but they will come see your job through all the critical points. We'll kind of walk you through contract law, and it's a pretty formalized mentoring program. And then again, you have to submit 3 projects with all the construction documentation and everything for review. So yeah.
Very good. And when did you become a master exactly?
Hasn't been that long. 5 years now. So 2014, somewhere around that.
Nice.
So yeah.
Well, congratulations, because know that that's a huge accomplishment in our industry.
It is, yeah, and it's I really enjoy the camaraderie as well. Just the SWD organization and just how we all get along and just collaborate all across the country. And I always know if I have a client that lives in the Northeast, I know, okay, I can call Bill, or I can call Jamie, or I can call those guys up there, and I know that I can make recommendations, almost anywhere in the country of a good high quality builder.
What would you tell somebody who's on the border, or on the fence of taking some Genesis classes? Because it can be, a big decision, and financially it's a little pricey, but we definitely think it's worth it. But what would you tell somebody? Because I think that making that jump from I'm not paying for any education, because we're not technically, we don't have to,
sure,
right? But we don't have like the stuff like plumbing and other things. But what would you tell somebody that's kind of on the fence, and why was it worth it?
It's for me, everything centers around relationship, and that's the one thing that we've really tried to be very intentional about within SWD and Genesis, is that the formulation of those relationships and allowing access, so as students come in, to be able to be engaging with the students and getting to know them. So if you're on the fence and you're really thinking about it, you're buying more than information, and it's very, very intentional. You can go read a book, you can go watch a YouTube video. You can get the information somewhere, especially in the Google age. You can get all of the information you need. Whether it's trustworthy or not is another question.
Sure.
But so much of what we have set up intentionally is just that, the ability to have the relationship, and that obviously with the SWD Masters, mentoring is part of the fabric of who we are and what we are. So once you kind of jump in, we always joke, you drank the Kool-Aid. When you come to the second class, you're kind of already part of the family, and that's, we really embrace that whole side of things.
Yeah, I heard you and Grant talking about, that sometimes it feels, or people have the opinion that you guys aren't really, approachable or reachable, but I don't, you were countering that a little bit with him. And
yeah. So this year I'm the chair of the advisory board for SWD, and that has been my stated goal, and that everybody in the organization knows that this is what we're going to do this year. We are going to make organizational leadership flat. It's with the millennials coming up, and it's just, everything is changing in the world right now. I think, I was talking to Grant, and the fact that you can jump on Twitter and tweet the President of the United States, and he may tweet back to you. There is no hierarchy in the world anymore. And so just kind of that ability to have everything flat, and I think, for a number of years, Genesis kind of had that aura of, these are the guys building the multi-million-dollar backyards, and yeah, we have that aspect here, but my goal is to be able to kind of flatten that out and allow everybody to be on more of a same playing field.
That's very cool.
So what would you say makes fluid dynamics kind of just unique?
Well, what I really love is that I love a challenge, and so and I love to figure things out. Growing up, Legos were one of my best friends. I love to be able to construct things and figure out how to make things work. And I was always taking apart the TV or whatever growing up. I always wanted to know how things work and see a way to make things better. And so it's really one of the things that has driven me to get to where we're at. We get to build some of the most high-profile jobs in LA, arguably one of the most high-profile markets in the world. And a lot of times, we get these jobs that, the architect has a vision and they know what they want. We just completed a job with a 200-foot long water wall that, for 150 feet of it, it's 6 feet tall, and then the last 40 feet is 17 feet tall. And how do we get the water to flow down it and to look uniform and all of that? And I knew what the architect's vision was, but nobody really knew how to build it. And so that's really where I thrive. I love to be able to get in and go, okay, here's the hydraulics that we need. Here's how many pumps. We need a surge tank on this, and just solving unique problems. And so I really think that's where it's one of the things that differentiates fluid dynamics from even our competition locally. There's a number of really high quality builders out here, and interestingly, a bunch of us are friends. I know a number of the guys that bid jobs against me, and we have this kind of standing gentleman's agreement that if we're both bidding the job, best man wins. And we never get upset when brand X gets it over me, and in the same way, and consequently for integrity reasons, we'll never talk about it until we know that one of us has gotten it or neither of us have gotten it. But then the other thing, about 4 years ago, I hired a drafter in-house, and we don't do any design work as far as what we call architectural design. I don't draw the pools. I don't. We don't design from scratch, but that doesn't necessarily mean I don't need to draft a lot of things. And so many of these details get so tricky and so intricate and so hard to pull off that even the architects don't understand them. And so I have a full-time drafter, and that's all she does is she draws different details, and I'm working, intimately with her, describing, okay, we need to tweak this, and so we're drawing details and then sending them back to the architect and saying, hey, is this your vision, and is this how you you envision seeing this built? And then they'll say, no, let's tweak it a little bit like this. And so that's one of the ways that we've really differentiated ourselves, even locally, is just being able to service the architects and just the realization that this is somebody else's baby, and they put a lot of time and a lot of energy, and they've expended a lot of creativity to come up with this, and I have a responsibility to birth it for them, and I have a responsibility to be true to what they have drawn. So many pool contractors especially have a real antagonistic relationship with architects, and I've never really understood that. It's we can figure out how to work together, and ultimately they have the vision, and it's just my job to implement it. So, right. And that's really where I shine. I love mechanical design and figuring out how many pumps and how big the pipes are going to be, and all the stuff that gets covered up and you never get seen.
I was going to say, what is your favorite part in that whole entire process? Because you see it all the way through after, you've hooked up with the architect and you know what's going to happen, but then you probably spend so much time kind of crunching those numbers and knowing, length, width, height, and all these different features that the pool needs to have. Then you have to go in and kind of run the numbers to see, how big the plumbing needs to be and, where the equipment's going to be. Which part is ultimately your favorite part in that whole entire?
Throughout the whole process, I'll answer that a little, even broaden it a little bit. I love the entire process. The beginning, a new set of plans comes into our office, and I have to open it up. I have to look at the plans, and even if I'm in the middle of a bid that I have to get out, that is the one area where I tend to not be super focused. A new job comes in and I open it up and I always get excited. Oh, I can figure out how to do this, and this one's weird. And so I love that excitement at the beginning and kind of the unknown of how to do some of these details and pull them off. So that's real fun at the beginning for me. And then, throughout the process, my next favorite point is just once we kind of have the structural shell in place, the holes dug, we've got the rebar in place, you can see the skeleton, and just that transition, that day where, sometimes there are multiple days, but on a smaller project, that day when, the client leaves for work in the morning and there's just this skeleton and you kind of have a rough idea, and then they come home and boom, there's the pool. Shotcrete Day is it's such a special day. And then, and then at the end when you turn it over, there's always that fulfillment of when you fire up the pumps and you turn the vanishing edge on or whatever, and that first moment where you look at it and you see, you see your baby brought to life and it's everything that you had hoped.
Is there one pool in particular that it just kind of, maybe it's the most high profile pool you've ever built and it was just like, oh wait, I got this, like I fully understand it and I can take on, kind of anything. Do you remember, the first pool that was kind of that for you? Yeah,
there's been different ones that have done that. There's a couple, milestones. The main one that comes to mind, it's a neighborhood that outside of LA, nobody's ever even heard of it. It's a neighborhood called Beverly Park. And, you don't really, nobody talks about it. It's this kind of back behind the hill in Beverly Hills. And, it's super high security just to get in there. But, Denzel lives in there. And it's like a...
Kobe lives, I think.
Kobe's down in Coda.
Oh, yeah, he's in Coda. That's right.
But Samuel Jackson lives there. Barry Bonds is in the neighborhood. So it's sort of like a who's who. There's a number of the Saudi princes live in the neighborhood. So it's this quiet little neighborhood that nobody really talks about. But, like the cheapest house in there is like $30 million. Oh,
wow.
And so we had a project up in that area that it just required such precision, and the client had picked a concrete paver that she wanted for the deck, and it was kind of this radial pattern that traveled throughout the entire deck, and that was picked at the very beginning, long before we ever started construction, and it was a full perimeter overflow pool, and the pool is really large too. It's about 2,500 square feet, so it's a huge, just under 100,000 gallon pool, residential. But the pool had curves to it, and then all of the stone, the wet coping that butted up to the dry paver coping had this same radial pattern going through it. And that was all CNC machined, so the coping was all built. Everything was built before we built the pool, based on the drawings. And so our tolerance was literally like a quarter of it to an eighth of an inch. I mean, we had to be perfect. Our radius had to be exactly perfect, because, with the patterns, traveling through from the deck and into the pool had to all line up. Right. And, the project manager on that job, outside of myself, he was just super instrumental, and so it was really a team collaboration between the general contractor and the project manager, and then my team and everything to get everything perfect. And for me, that's kind of the most fulfilling job that we've done, because we pulled it all off. So the pool was really large, and then and then we had there's three separate bodies of water on the property. And then they had a traditional hot spa that's kept at 104. And then right next to it is a cold plunge that's 43 degrees all year round.
Oh, nice.
So really, that was a really challenging job, but just super fulfilling too.
Right. And how do you that's a ton of responsibilities. I'm just thinking about a neighborhood that's got Denzel Washington and Barry Bonds and stuff like that. I mean, these other people that live in the neighborhood, they're okay with dump trucks and, trailers coming through with excavators and, because some of these projects, I'm sure they take months to do it and you're just in and out. And I'm sure if you screw up one of these pools, I mean, that could kind of, make or break your business. You can keep going up where they talk about you, or you could be shut down that day.
Instantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's a ton of, risk in being in some of those neighborhoods, I'm sure.
Yeah. They're pretty well regulated as well, though. You have to get through the security gate. And so, you're not allowed to work after certain hours. So there's a lot of restrictions. I mean, it's like an HOA on steroids. There's high security getting in. But the other thing about these properties is they're, at least for LA, they're pretty large properties.
So they're spread out.
Yeah, exactly. Very rarely do you see even the neighbor's house. I mean, they're not huge, multi-acre properties, but this property was probably an acre and a half. So they're decent sized properties, and within these neighborhoods, everybody's so private. You never know if TMZ is going to buy the house next door or anything like that. So each of the lots are pretty isolated as well. A lot of them have great views, but you're not looking out the sides to see your neighbors.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Look forward to looking on social media or the website for that pool.
Yeah, it's a really cool, and it's we did white pebble fina in it, so it's actually even kind of a traditional. So much of what gets built is super modern, contemporary, and dark and heavy and very, where this pool has really kind of a light airiness to it, and so that's kind of a unique too. It's not your typical, super hyper contemporary black pool.
Right. Something you might see in a old Slim Aaron's photo or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the other cool things, I read an article that you talked about collaborating with other, builders to work as a team. Why is that important to you? And, I understand your, the way you do things, but how is that important, to be able to collaborate with other builders on bigger projects like that?
I've just come to the realization, and I have so much humility personally that it seems even weird to say that. That I just don't know it all. I get the opportunity to build some of these really, really cool pools, but I still need help. And so the ability to reach out and say, hey, I don't understand how to do exactly this detail. You had mentioned my interview with Grant Smith. I call him regularly, and he's a fellow pool builder that we actually do all of his plumbing and mechanical installs. And we bid, we're in the same marketplace. But there's times when I call him and ask questions of him. He's way more versed in concrete than I am. And then he'll call me and say, hey, I got this idea for a plumbing detail. What do you think about that? So, the reality is that some of these are just so darn complex that I may have an idea and think, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. And then somebody else comes in with a different idea that's either better or simpler or, more efficient or whatever. And so just the humility to realize that there are other ways to do it. And I always like to explore at least a few of those options to see, is there something that could be done better? Because ultimately the client appreciation and the client satisfaction is the goal, and so I don't need my pride to step in the way of that. I just need to, we want to provide the best we can for the client.
I'm sure that helps too with what Greg was talking about, the responsibility and the weight of that pressure of the big projects. Like, you want to make sure that you are 100% correct, and having those outlets and collaborations, I'm sure, help with that.
Yeah, definitely. It lets me sleep a little better at night. I still keep, stay awake at night on some of these details that we're creating. But yeah, it's to have known that, somebody else has vetted a detail, or they've done it, or they've, and we're tweaking it or whatever. It definitely helps ease some of those worrisome moments.
You did everything you could possibly do to make sure that your effort was 100% what you know how to do by reaching out to others and making sure you understand it.
Yeah. And again, I alluded a little bit to it earlier too, is that, I swing for the fences a lot, and there's been a number of times where I've walked into a project and said, yeah, no problem, we can do that. And then I'm, as soon as I'm in the car on the way home, I'm calling, 4 or 5 people going, okay, I think I'm going to land this project, and I know you've done it. And that's where the relationships with SWD have come in, because I know, like I can call Rick Chafee and say, hey, Rick, we had a detail actually on a job that Rick is working as a consultant on out here in L.A., crazy acrylic window and everything. And I called Rick and said, can you help me out with this? And he had actually already been engaged on the job. So he was already working with the client, but just, that ability to know, this is a guy I can call that has done this, and I may not understand it yet, but I know that person has, and to have those phone numbers all available.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll jump into a topic I think we've talked about before, but I really like your view on it. So, what do you, how critical is it when you take a pool that you've built, and especially some of these high-end pools, and take them from when you're overseeing them to the service technician that's now going to then take care of the pool? What does that transition look like, and how important do you think that is?
It is critical. I mean, that's, I had alluded to that earlier, is that to me, the service guy is part of my team. And there's actually even times where I will bring in, Dave is my primary service guy on the really difficult stuff. I'll bring him in mid-construction. Sometimes we'll bring him into the mechanical room before we even set pumps, or before we're even stubbing up pipes, and saying, okay, here's what we're thinking. What do you, and that may be a year before he's ever going to be, putting a vac head in there. And so, to me, I don't think you can discount the need for the maintenance guys. Ultimately, they're the ones that have to make it and keep it looking good. And so, I have always set up my contracts where I don't, unless I know that a client has a high-quality service guy, I set up startup, I set up everything in my contract. And so we will, I want to turn that pool over knowing that the programming has been done right, that everything is up and running, that it's functional, that the plaster startup has been completed properly, I differ from a lot of builders in that they will, you guys probably saw this from your side, that a lot of builders will say, oh yeah, well, I'll recommend you, but you're doing it for free. And I never wanted to put that carrot out in front of anybody. I wanted to tell my service guys, your time is worth it, and you are a professional, and you need to be paid for what you do. And so every one of my startups is built into my contract, and Dave gets a check for every one of the startups that he does. And then at the end of the day, because as you guys had your company, a week or so into it, you get the sense, is this client going to keep it themselves? Are they not going to do it? And maybe not you guys, but some guys get pretty unmotivated to kind of finish well. And, but Dave knows that he's going to get paid. And so, whether it's $1,000 or $5,000 to start up this pool, he knows that he needs to finish well to keep his relationship with me. And again, it goes back to client satisfaction. We're turning over a pool that is programmed properly, and yeah, I could do that because I have that background, but I don't want to do that anymore. It's a way for me to build his business and to get him, quality clients, and and it's not a good use of my time as the CEO of a construction company.
I do think that the builders could maybe, at least in our area, do a little bit better of a job with communicating the pricing of service to the actual homeowner,
Sure.
So that, the homeowner has a better idea when they go to the technician of, kind of what that's going to look like, especially if they're going to be recommending companies, because I could very well see a builder telling them it's going to be maybe, $200 or $300 a month, and you got to be there twice a week, or whatever it may be, but it never gets to the service company, and you might be tested, because there's been many times where we've been in backyards and they're like, well, I'm not going to tell you what I was paying. Why don't you kind of throw a price out. And then they're like, oh, yeah, we'll do it for that. I'm like, oh, well, what did I do to myself? Might have just shot myself in the foot.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think that would be, really nice if that conversation, was had after the pool is built and, you walk through maybe the equipment or automation or whatever, what's going on. But it'd be nice to go over that and be like, and I think I heard it in one of your talks where it's like, just had a Ferrari built. You know what I mean? You're not going to take it to the, to the 76
Chevy dealer.
car wash or whatever. It'd be nice that, just tell them that, dude, this is what you're going to be looking at and you want to take good care of it.
Not only to the homeowner, but I think even when you're working with Dave, your service tech, to explain to him, hey, like this pool is very technical, very difficult. You need to be here 2-3 times a week and you need to charge this amount of money. And then that way you communicate with the customer that like, hey, this is what it's probably going to be. And then you leave it up to Dave to whatever, determine the end price. But at least explain like, you need to be here a couple times a week. I've explained to the customer it's probably going to be around $300-$400 a month. Like then you price it, but that's what we've talked about. And that way, that service technician also gets what he deserves. And, then you feel comfortable as a builder handing that over and knowing that, because if you're taking on a pool, you're there for 2 weeks, 2-3 times a week, and you're getting $150.
Right.
Like that technician's not going to be motivated to continue to do that work or do a good job at that pool.
Yeah, and I think even to broaden that conversation even further, it's about relationship again, and that's why sometimes I do bring Dave in pretty early, because I am out of the service side of it. I understand enough of it, and I did it for long enough to kind of understand. But there's times where he comes in and he says, "Well, no, this needs to be a 5-day-a-week service," and really, do you really think so? And so even having those conversations up front, and so I would encourage service guys to try and build that relationship with some builders that they can learn to trust you and ask them to bring you in, because, I've been out of service for, almost 5 years now. I don't know what's happening with rates. I don't know how much chlorine costs anymore. I don't know. I hear, through the grapevine, just listening to your show and just being a part of the industry that chemicals are going crazy, but I don't know what that looks like on a spreadsheet and on my balance sheet. And so bringing in, a service guy early and then actually asking them, okay, here's what I think. I think 3 days. Well, no, I think it should be 4 days. And okay, well, finding out from the service company, how much we should be talking to the client. And ultimately, it's the client's decision. But, I think that we as builders could definitely do a better job of educating the clients of what to expect and how much it's going to cost them.
Yeah. Do you think you have a advantage coming from the service background in understanding that part?
100%. Some of the best builders that I know started out in service. People that have heard me talk before have heard. It's I stood on my head, fixing heaters so many times, and wedged myself between a block wall and the back of a motor, and trying to have special tools made to get the motor off because you can't reach it. It's we've all done that, and it's just irresponsible as builders. And so, yeah, I definitely, we design all of our systems with the maintenance guy in mind. The pool has to stay looking good, and in order to stay looking good, it's going to require motor swaps and it's going to require filter cleans, and it's just human nature. When you walk into a job, and no matter how beautiful it is, if you're having to crawl over 12 things to get to the pump basket, to clean it, eventually you're going to get frustrated, and it's going to.
Well, you're definitely not emptying every pump basket every week if it's like that.
Yeah, but ultimately
you should be. But
yeah.
Climbing over 12 pumps to empty every one of them is difficult.
Dude,
Yeah.
One of the last pools that we bid was probably about 5-8 pumps, but I mean, they were stacked on top of each other, plumbing over pump lids. I mean, you could not, there's a huge wall. There was even like a mesh net over the top to kind of to sit over it. But, I asked, there wasn't even a fence.
I remember that.
The pool's green, and she's like, oh, you're going to have to get over this. And I'm like, I'm not even going to do that. With all due respect, this was not built for a human being. I'm not Because I wasn't going to be the one doing it. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I'm not going to jump over this fence, I'm not going to expect, one of our guys to jump this fence every time. And
find
you
a
just told me
rattlesnake or whatever.
and you warned me, said, be careful before you jump over there because there's been snakes and spiders. Like, yeah, I'm definitely not. Thank you for that. You just gave me that exit. I'm definitely not doing that. But find it very, kind of irresponsible because you go to so many pools and we could see 20 pools that were exact volume and shape and kind of home structure in a neighborhood, but they were wired differently and the equipment sets could be in different places. I mean, there's just so many, inconsistencies that, it'd be really nice to have a little bit more consistency, I guess.
Yeah. Some of that goes back to the architects and the designers too. And that's one of the things that I really want to try and kind of expand the horizons there. I mean, sometimes we get a shoebox closet, and as pool builders, builders need to get better about kind of bringing it up and saying, no, a 4x4, area is not big enough for me to put the 4 pumps and heater and filter and everything else that we need in here, and so I think oftentimes the builder gets kind of strong-armed into something that they need to it's not all about the sale. It's about making the whole thing and looking long term, and if you can't clean the filter or if it's dangerous to clean the filter, that's definitely doing an irresponsibility to the client because down the road the pool's going to look like crud. And ultimately the client wants to be able to enjoy this for years to come, not just the 4 months after you leave.
Yeah, I think what we were talking about earlier, where you can, if you're a builder or architect and you don't really understand that plumbing dynamics of it, to reach out to somebody like you or other plumbing companies that, like Justin J. Max, like other people that understand it, and that way you're designing it, and you say, hey, I want the pool to do this, and I want this water feature and this slide and this. Well, that takes 8 pumps. Oh, I thought it took 3, with valves and whatever. And he's no, to do it correctly, you need 8 pumps, which means you need this big of a pump room. So I think for people that don't understand it, you don't necessarily have to dive in and learn it fully. But if you can collaborate with people that do understand it, and either they can do it for you or teach you the right way to do it, then I think that would definitely make for less of those irresponsible situations where you walk into that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize the responsibility to the client either.
Sure.
There is some, this race to the bottom with pricing. It's, if you're going out and all you care about is getting the lowest price, that's the kind of stuff that you can expect. And so, some of it is on the client's, end of it too, that, if you're looking for the bottom bid, don't expect it to work really like it should.
Yeah, the bottom bid people are always going to be the ones that most people don't want to work with, even the service guys. Those are the ones that you get for $120 when they should be $300. And I understand everybody needs to take on work, but if you can avoid those clients, it's better for you.
Yeah, and that, I think education and just what you guys are doing, the people that are your listeners here and the people that are coming to the Genesis programs and that, they're the kind of people that are not necessarily going to be racing to the bottom, and we all tend to find each other. It's you guys find the best builders in town, and we all. You kind of see this segmentation of the market where the crummy builders end up with the cheap service guys that are throwing 20 tabs in there and coming back 3 weeks later and that kind of stuff. So they kind of find themselves and that's always been my kind of back to your question earlier, why did I get involved with Genesis? It's very much like, let's raise the bar for each other, and let's all get better because it's just better for all of our companies. And the more high quality work you do, you not only attract high quality clients, but you also, you just find yourself growing into higher and higher quality projects as well.
For sure. So technology has kind of brought our industry to a place where we're now using variable speed pumps and other type of eco-friendly equipment. There's some pushback within the industry to move on and change to that. Can you explain maybe your thoughts on why it's so important to kind of embrace that?
Yeah, I remember when the IntelliFlow first came out. I mean, it was just such a game changer, and I, very early on, I saw the ability of what we could do with it, and so. To me, I actually don't even totally understand the pushback. I do realize I'm in in the Southern California market, we pay ridiculous rates for electricity. And so I actually studied it very early on and actually did some case studies with clients where, we would remove a 2-horse whisper flow and put in an IntelliFlow. And I did it at cost so that I could, have access to their electric bills and everything. And at least out here, the number that I came up with was like 6 to 8 months. It paid for itself in a very short period of time. So, once I saw that, I mean, it was easy for me to kind of jump all in. I think we're seeing a bit of the changing of the guard in the industry. I think Pool Chasers is a an integral part of that. You have the younger guys, you have the younger generation that is more concerned with being, eco-conscious and kind of understanding that, you don't have to drive a big block V8 truck. You can do the same thing for your service route in a Toyota or something like that. I mean, there's always the place for that. But I just think you're seeing that being embraced a lot more by the industry. And so I think a lot of the pushback really came from kind of the old guard guys that, 1.5-inch plumbing meant 1.5 horsepower pump, and 2-inch plumbing meant 2 horsepower pumps. And, with the introduction of the, back then, the Purex A series pump, which was really kind of that hybrid, that really kind of medium high head brass pump that just, kicked butt and moved a ton of water. You're moving away from the old brass pumps into that. And then, very quickly on the heels of that, you had, like the Maxi Glass pumps and the Duraglass and kind of the new generation plastic pumps that, really took high head to a whole new level. And, people didn't know how to put them in at that point. And I remember, so often you'd walk into a backyard and they were changing out, a 2-horse Aquaflow brass pump for a 2-horse Maxi Glass, and the thing was screaming and that. But that old guard has kind of really held on and not really grown with it. And yeah, there is definitely a learning curve with all of the variable speed pumps. It's I talk about the IntelliFlow because I love Pentair equipment, and that's what I'm most familiar with. But everybody's pumps are the technology has finally matured where everybody's got decent variable speed pumps. But you do have to you have to spend a couple minutes. It's not just moving 2 trippers on a time clock. You have to sit down and you have to learn how to move through the menus and all of that. And so I'm really glad to see it finally kind of being much more better embraced with the industry. But overall, I mean, I just think one of the side benefits that when it first came out that I did not expect at all was, we were used to running pumps 4-6 hours a day, and occasionally you would run the pump, 3 hours in the morning and 5 hours at night or something like that. The ability to turn the speed down and to run that pump 18 or 20 hours and still be saving electricity. But one of the side benefits was just that as you're running that water slower through your filters, you're not like forcing the water through the grids. And it used to be back in the day where, DE filtered pools were way cleaner than everything else because, they filter so much finer. But with the advent of variable speed pumps, at least in our market out here in California, cartridges became a very viable filter media, which never really took place out here. But the analogy that I tell clients is like if you you remember as a kid, you take a hose and you put like a towel or something over top of it. If you just spray that hose real lightly, it's going to hit the towel and it's going to bounce off. But if you run that hose at full, at full speed, and you're shooting that water real fast at it, a lot of that water is going to pass through to the other side. And filters are kind of the same way. The faster you hit it with water, you're going to be pushing some of that dirt through. But just by slowing everything down, not only are you saving electricity, you don't have any noise pollution anymore. You get these things to the point where they're almost silent, so it's better environment for the client. You don't have 18 hours of downtime when the pump is not running. You can run it 20 hours and it's only down from midnight to 4, and who cares? So all in all, the benefits are just so outweigh, the extra added expense, and it's really not. It's not as expensive as people think.
And where are you at right now with just water chemistry? You're putting UV ozone units in, chemical feeders?
Yeah, we chemical feeders are every one of our jobs. I don't bid a job without full chemical automation. We always do option ozone and UV. I have the benefit that my clients can, spend some extra money and really set up, pretty commercial grade systems. Ozone, I love ozone. I don't have a pool currently. My kids are still too small. But when I build my own pool here in the next year or two, I will definitely put ozone on it. It's expensive, but it's definitely worth it and done properly. So I love ozone. Chemical automation, to me, that's the next variable speed pump breakthrough that the marketplace needs to realize. It's just, especially even in the last, 12 months even, that we're learning how bad cyanuric acid is and just everything. In a market like Arizona, it's impossible for you guys to keep chlorine in a pool. So, what do? Do you go to 5 days a week service? The marketplace is not going to accept that. And so, really the most responsible thing is full chemical automation and being able to, sense and dispense and put the chemicals in that are needed so that you're not having to juice it and end up with 10 ppm when you leave, so that when you come back, you're still at 2 parts per million of chlorine, the following week after the kids were in all week.
How do you protect that though? Because in our Arizona heat with it banging on it, 17 hours or 15 hours a day, I think that's what we kind of saw was like a lot of the small fine, hoses will start to crack or the
muriatic
sensors
acids coming out of the O-rings are getting cut.
Yeah. So, how do you guys mostly do pump rooms, or, how do you protect one that's like out in the open environment?
I think that there's just it's sort of like, if you're trying to clean a filter every 18 months, it doesn't really work, and just
Sure.
broadening your horizons to understand that these are serviceable items, and, different markets are different ways, but out here we replace all of our hoses every year. And so all those hoses get replaced every year, and, figure out whatever your market is, and maybe it's every 6 months, and that just becomes a rhythm that the client needs to expect and understand. And
Do you think it's explained to them well, to the clients? Because I think you're right, and I think if you approach it as like a serviceable, and even for a service company, that can be another source of income, because you're just like a filter clean. If you're doing every 6 months or every year, you kind of just put that in. So if you have a pool that has a chemical feeder, like, this is just part of our service agreement with you, is this gets done every so often. But I don't, because we had one, I remember particularly that, like, they had no idea about their chemical feeders and how much it was going to cost them, and how much it was costing us to, like, put 4 gallons of chlorine in a week, like stuff like that, where they really didn't understand how complicated their system was.
But you have to figure out your pricing and how to communicate that with a customer, because once we had, Pentair come out and tell us and break everything down and how the chemical feeders worked, and said the stuff's going to have to be replaced every, 6 months or once a year or whatever, then we would have done a thing where it's like, okay, we're just going to put this into the kind of monthly cycle billing. So, because we know it's going to have to be done. Regardless if we have problems with it, it's going to be swapped out. twice a month.
That took us forever to learn, though. Like,
yeah, it
it's not
definitely
explained to you, like, hey, when you have to take over a system, like, and again, I guess that goes back
because
to
the chemistry
communication.
reading wasn't even something that we knew when we took on that first
Right.
pool. It was like ORP, and it's like,
what's
what
ORP?
the hell is all this crap?
Yeah.
And it's nice to come from the service side, because even we live in an area that people have money out there, but still don't see. You still see a lot of pools that still have intermatic time clocks, and still have kind of more basic setups. Even there's some really nice pools in Troon that have the infinity edge and beautiful pool, but you still go back there and there's still 2, 3,
16 single speed pumps.
Yeah,
exactly.
And since the homeowner doesn't know too much about it, they feel like they're being nickel and dime, so it makes it hard.
I think one of the ways you can, as a service company, a client doesn't expect that, when they drive a car off a showroom floor that the windshield wipers are going to last forever, and just kind of coming up with some of those kind of analogies. And they may not have known it. And, on the builder side, it's I do what I can to educate the clients, but some things definitely slip through the cracks. But just having that kind of understanding with your clients of explaining, well, why are you, $170 a month when my neighbor that has a similar pool is $135, and you explain, well, you've got this and you've got this, and, yours is more complex. The backyard pool may look very similar, but, this is a much more sophisticated system, and your pool is going to be cleaner than that one is.
Yeah. I think from your perspective too, like, I think Jeremy says to us before, it was like, if the client gets to a point where he's zoning out and doesn't even really care about that part too, that's hard to kind of make sure they understand, because when you start talking chemistry and feeders and all this, I don't think a lot of them have a whole lot of interest in it, but
sure.
Try to do your best to make them understand the importance, I guess, of maintaining that. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
So, you've done some amazing projects, and we've seen quite a few of them. What would you say is your favorite by far to date?
The Beverly Park one, that one definitely stands out. We did a project for a fashion designer that we weren't allowed to take any pictures of or anything. It was really, really a cool pool, though. It was, to my understanding, it has the longest pool cover at least in the States. So the pool was 20 by 140, and we had a single... one of the floating pool covers that deployed from the floor of the pool.
Nice.
So that was a fun job. I'm really bummed that we could never take pictures of it.
What does something like that cost? A cover that big?
That cover was...
And that does that.
Yeah.
And it's like fully automatic coming out of the ground.
Mm-hmm. That was my cost, $130,000 just for the pool cover itself.
Whew.
So,
dang.
Yeah. But it's one of those
plastic wrap.
Yeah. One that we just finished recently, about a year ago. A technology that really, I think, is you're going to see it more and more as more people, as more high-end architects understand it and understand the technology. We did a movable floor job, and so it was a spa that the floor raises up, and the client had a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old was very busy, and so they were real worried about, the 2-year-old having access and obviously drowning in the pool. And so we struggled to find a good solution, because they wanted the spa is actually the jewel of the backyard, and it's a raised full perimeter overflow vessel, and they always wanted to have that ability of the water to spill over, and so
so it's adjustable.
Yeah, the floor is adjustable.
You can actually adjust where the height is.
Yep.
So they can make like a kiddie pool if they wanted to?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It's really intriguing technology. It was actually created more for like a commercial type market, and I believe the first one in the United States is in the Midwest, maybe. And back there, it was at a senior center, and they didn't have the ability to they didn't have any more real estate, and so they couldn't build anything out. So they had an existing building, and so they came in and put a swimming pool in this building because they get snow there and they wanted to be able to utilize it year round. But it was also the place where they had bingo and all of that. And so rather than going out and buying a piece of property next to it, they put this movable floor system in.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how complicated was that?
It's not very complicated, but the part that makes it complicated is that the precision that's required is that's where the complication comes in. The overall system is actually fairly straightforward. It's just hydraulics and stainless and
it's kind of like a lift that pretty much is just lifting this.
Yeah, there's 2 ways it gets done. The system that we installed on the spa was basically just a scissors lift. So the overall spa, the actual water element of the spa, it's 6 feet deep. But then the scissors lift mechanism sits in the bottom. So as the floor goes down, it never goes down into that bottom 3 feet. And so, there's always water in the scissors lift mechanism. So that's one way it gets done. On a more larger scale in a swimming pool, it's actually pretty simple. It's big stainless steel plates, and then they have foam floats that come up underneath and cause the plates to float. And then it's all tied to stainless steel cables on a piston system. And when you want to pull the floor down, the cables actually just pull the floor down to whatever depth you have it set at. And then when you don't want it and you want the floor to be back in the up position, it just floats up with the floats that are underneath it. And then once it gets to the set point at the top, there's some locking pins that deploy into the wall to stabilize the floor so you can walk on it and everything. So
I'm assuming that's really expensive because I know we've talked about something like that before, a lot for children's safety, because if you left a pool, you guys were done swimming, or you just have little ones in a pool, it's like, hey, we're just going to have this sit at 2 feet opposed to having it all the way down to, 5, 6, whatever. But something like that, pretty pricey.
At this point, it's still really going to be just for the super high-end market.
Right.
And it's not even that it's that it's so expensive. It's just, stainless steel is expensive. And if you, a 20 by 40 pool, 800 square feet of stainless steel, thick enough to walk on, and that. And then the other big thing too is you can't plaster a pool like that, so it has to be an all-tile pool, and so your finish is so at this point in its maturation as a technology, it's still going to stay in the high end, but that's what I love about this industry is that somebody ingenious is going to come up with a way to get that price point down to where it's going to eventually. I don't know that it'll filter into like normal residential construction, but high-end construction, I could definitely see that because it, especially out here in California where yards are so small, you can make it a dual-use yard. You can put the floor up and you can have hardscape in the backyard, and then use the pool when you need the pool.
Right. Nice. Thank you so much, Dave. So you just recently started a Facebook group and a podcast called Ask the Masters, which we're really excited about. And we've been kind of glued to, listening to every episode. And, thank you so much for, taking the time to do it, because it's much needed in our industry to share as much information as possible. Can you talk to us a little bit more and share with our listeners more about it?
Sure. It was really kind of watching you guys and watching how you guys have really kind of changed the industry and kind of brought the industry together. It kind of got me thinking, hey, these guys are doing a great job with the maintenance guys and that, and now as you're broadening and talking to builders and that too, I think that I can, have a voice in the industry as well. And so we really feel like, both of these entities, we kind of are going to target different audiences. So we're really, we have a page called Ask the Masters. We launched that as we're recording just about a month ago. And the focus of that page is really design and construction practices and engineering, and basically everything on the early end of a pool life, as we bring it out of the ground and as we birth the pool structure itself, and we're real intentional about not getting into service discussions, not because I don't think that they're not worthy, but there's your page. There's some other really good pages out there that do that better than we will ever do it. And so, we don't feel like we want to compete or pull those clients away. So our whole goal is really is an extension of the classroom. In our Genesis classes, we have. There's only so much time, and there's so much more that we want to get into, and there's so much more that we want to teach, that you just can't do it. And then just certain specific questions and certain nuances that wouldn't require a whole classroom discussion, but would be great on a Facebook forum or something like that.
Yeah, it seems like a really good way to stay up to date, especially as frequent as the episodes come out, because, things change all the time, and it's a good way for, other builders that are, have really mastered their craft to get on there and talk about some of the challenges in the industry, and also some of the things that are going really well. So who exactly is this, podcast for? That way everybody kind of knows, not to get in the group and, just be asking service questions. Because I think you and Paulo had a really good discussion, just kind of about, what the platform and who it's for.
Yeah, I think anybody can benefit from it. We're not, you have to answer a couple of questions it's a closed group. So you have to, you can find us, but you're not automatically entered in there. And so the criteria for entry is that you either are making your living somehow related to water. Doesn't necessarily have to be swimming pools. It can be fountains. It can be that. So everything in and around water, but also like landscape architects and designers and that. We really want to engage that community and bring them in there. You're always going to get the homeowner, the odd homeowner that sneaks in, and you can't control that to an extent. But we're really intentional that this is going to be kind of an industry-based page. But one of the things as I kind of came up through my education that I always loved was. The instructors were always doing, really cool projects. And so, it's always fun to hear about what's the cutting edge and, what the next $2 million pool, what they're adding in, because, eventually that does trickle down into more of the mainstream. And so, we talk a lot about that kind of stuff. And, Paulo and I talked about ozone and AOP and that. We've got last week we recorded a series with Dave Rockwell, who's like the guru of ozone. He does all of our ozone installations out here, and so we had a whole show on that and kind of getting everybody up to speed and understanding it. So really, I think we're trying to create compelling content that could be relevant to everywhere, and not everybody is going to listen to every show, and that's fine. But anything in and around water, I'm sure there's some content that you might enjoy.
Most definitely, and thank you so much. And people don't realize how convenient podcasts really are, and you're really kind of missing out, and you're not listening to Pool Chasers or Ask the Masters, because it can be difficult, especially when you have a business that's busy and you're driving around and doing these different things. It's really hard to crack open these books, which you should, but you'll really be inspired to go kind of the next level with your education and reading books and being in classes when you're inspired by just, listening to the podcast and educating yourself and being motivated by, people that have, that have done some really big things in our industry. So most definitely, stay on the podcast.
Well, and I just think, it's gotten to the point where, you can podcast from your phone and you got your wireless earphones on. And, I remember, I had to know, okay, here's what time this radio program comes on when I clean pools, because it was all on the radio, and it was like, oh, shoot, I was listening to a CD or something, and I missed that part of the show. And that's one of the great things about podcasting, too, is that it's all available anytime, and you can scroll through the menu and go, oh, that one looks really interesting. And you can kind of plug in and plug out, and you don't have to be, oh, shoot, that was Monday at 1, and I was on vacation, and so I missed that one, and it's gone forever. That's one of the things I really enjoy about podcasting as well.
Yeah, it's on demand. So, talking about podcasts, do you have any other podcasts you listen to or books that you recommend to listeners?
I live in LA, which means I live in my car. I actually do. I do quite a bit of books on tape. Obviously the Pool Chasers podcast. I listen to some religious type podcasts. Kind of my go-to don't miss is a podcast called Vox. A buddy of mine has created that. I really I don't listen to it enough, but the TED Talk Radio Hour from NPR, that's
amazing.
Really, really cool show, and there's always such great content there. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm a white guy, and I have 2 black kids, so I'm really, I just downloaded a book on Martin Luther King, and just trying to learn a little bit about African American culture. And I read a book last year called 12 Years a Slave, which was actually a true story about a black man from, I think, New York, who was kidnapped, a free man, kidnapped, and that was one of the books that they say kind of inspired the Civil War. So just the true story of that. So that's
they did that to a movie.
They did, yeah. It was a movie about 3 or 4 years ago. Mm. Yep. So, I spend a lot of time listening. As you actually had asked me that question, I realized that I actually don't do a lot of time like fun books or anything like that. As I looked through my list, I was like, man, these are all intentional. There's intentionality to all of it. But
for the first time ever, as long as I've been doing audiobooks and podcasts and all that, I just recently coming back from went to Flagstaff over the weekend. I was like, you know what? I'm going to look up Stephen King. And I just started listening to some Stephen King book, and I'm like jacked on it. I'm like, I don't know where this is going, but this is super outside of anything I normally do. But it's cool. I think that's what's cool about TED Talks. It is kind of more centered around entrepreneurs and business, but there's some really off the wall topics on there that you can just listen to. You're like, I don't think I can get anything from this. And you'll listen to it and you're like, damn. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you get lost in YouTube sometimes, and you just descend down into it, and 12 in, and you're like, oh, that one was good, and then the next 11 suck, and
I gotta go to work.
Exactly, go to bed.
Well, it's been really fun getting to know you and hearing your story. We really respect what you've done, and we've been talking for several months now on trying to make this work. So we're super excited that we were able to come down and spend time with you. Can you share with us where to find you on social media, and then also maybe the Ask the Masters?
Yeah. So my passion right now just has been the Ask the Masters page, which is just a closed Facebook group. Fluid Dynamics Pools is Instagram. That's kind of where I post stuff. I don't really post on Facebook. Everything goes to Instagram first, and then kind of just feeds through to Facebook itself. Those are the two main ways to catch me.
What's your website?
FluidDynamicsPools.com, but I'll apologize in advance. It hasn't been updated in about 4 or 5 years, and we don't have hardly any of our new stuff on there. So
it's really impressive because there's some really good stuff on there right now.
Yeah, the Instagram page is where we really kind of show a lot of stuff and
I could see
jobs
that
we can.
When I was researching and I pulled the website up, and then I looked at the Instagram. I'm like, man, why is this pool not on there?
Exactly. Yeah. Just laziness. Too busy on my side.
No, I definitely understand that. Well, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast. Like I said, we truly respect you and appreciate your time.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. It's I just want to reiterate to the listeners that there could be seen this rivalry between two podcasts in the same kind of space, and we at Ask the Masters don't feel like that at all. We feel like we can both be complementary, and I just commend you guys for what you guys have done too. You kind of paved the way even for us to be able to realize, hey, there's a need out there, and there's a hunger for information, and two different perspectives coming at this industry, I think is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending that with us. Also, if you guys missed episode 30, we discussed how we are now doing Pool Chasers full time. We're super excited for it, guys. It's a very big step as husbands and as fathers, but we truly believe in the message. We 100% believe in the Pool Chasers community. So we launched our Patreon page. So if the podcast has brought you any value at all, please consider donating financially. Every little bit helps. We're very committed to bringing you guys the best content possible. This will help us go out and get that content for you. So if you believe in the podcast as much as we do and you want to sign up to be a patron, go to patreon.com/poolchasers. That's patreon.com/poolchasers. This would mean the world to us, guys. We truly appreciate your time and your ear. We will not take it for granted. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, please email us at poolchasers.info@gmail.com. Please take the time to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you have not checked out the Facebook group yet, please do so. It's awesome in there. Also, if you could take a little bit of time to go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and review us, that would really help us out there. So thank you guys so much for the support. We appreciate all of you so much.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.